Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. Chapter 13. Sammy's POV. I didn't run into Dante for the rest of that week. I thought I'd see him Friday morning during our usual lunch delivery, but instead, Cassie showed up. "Looking good," she called out, cheering for my new trainees as she made her way to the back room. I was doing some bookkeeping when her voice echoed through the open door, loud and full of energy as always. I knew she'd arrived even before she appeared in front of me. "The kitchen made all your favorites today," she said excitedly, setting the bags down on one of the counters. The delicious aroma quickly filled the room, making it impossible to focus on anything else. "Slow day today, huh?" I asked, smiling. "I thought you might have made Dante your regular runner." Cassie shook her head quickly. "Nope. I just sent him here to keep him busy." His nose was still a little swollen, and I didn't want him working the front. Besides, why would I give up the chance to visit a gym full of athletic, shirtless guys training all day? I laughed softly. "You do realize your brother is one of those guys, right?" Cassie made a face of mock disgust. "Ugh, you always have to ruin it, Sammy." I chuckled again as she started gathering her things to leave, but I stopped her before she reached the door. I actually asked Dante if he could take a look at the roof this week," I said. "Turns out he knows a lot about that kind of work." He agreed, but mentioned his schedule's a bit unpredictable. "I was wondering if you happen to know when he might be free." Cassie thought for a moment. Since he's part-time, his hours change a lot. "But I don't think he's working this weekend, if that helps." I nodded. "Yeah. Could you pass my contact number to him?" "For sure," she said cheerfully. "I'll let him know you're free this weekend. Oh, and he mentioned something about buying a bed. It can be tough and pricey finding one around here." I wanted to help, but I already gave my spare mattress to Grayson when he moved out. Plus, neither of us has a vehicle to transport furniture. She paused thoughtfully before adding, "I just thought I'd mention it because you once said you had an extra bed when you moved in upstairs." I went silent for a moment as her words sank in. Suddenly, things made a lot more sense. "Yeah, I still have that bed," I said. "I wish I could get it to him, but it took 3 people just to haul it upstairs. Trying to move it into those old apartments on 88th sounds like a disaster waiting to happen." Cassie laughed. "Yeah, I remember Grayson complaining about how heavy that thing was. With how old those buildings are, it's a miracle the floors hold up at all." Even though she was joking, there was some truth to it. "But don't worry," she said quickly. "I'll ask around to see if anyone's got a spare. I really feel for him. Starting fresh in the city can be tough." "Very true," I agreed. That was the last thing I said before Cassie hurried off to work again. But even after she left, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. I wouldn't wish those apartments on anyone, especially not on someone as genuinely kind as Dante. The idea that he had to call that rundown place home didn't sit right with me. I decided then and there that I'd find some way to help. I didn't hear from Dante that Friday, and by Saturday morning, I started to worry Cassie might have forgotten to pass on my number. I hadn't had the chance to remind her last night since I stayed late with Adrian, one of my younger trainees. He'd been slacking lately, and with sectionals coming up next month, I couldn't afford to let him coast. I had him train until he was completely worn out, a lesson he took like a pro. By Saturday morning, I was starting to lose hope. I had even asked Grayson to cover classes for me that day, just in case Dante dropped by. But as the hours passed, my phone stayed silent. Then, suddenly, it buzzed on the bedside table. A message flashed on the screen from an unknown number. "Hi Sammy, this is Dante. Cassie passed your number along. Hope that's okay. I can stop by whenever you're free today to get started." I replied almost instantly. "Hi Dante, I'm glad you reached out. I'm free anytime today and would love for you to stop by whenever you're ready. The materials are all here waiting." I barely set my phone down when another message came through. "That sounds great. I'm just waking up, but I can be there around 9:30 if that works." I glanced at the clock, just a few minutes past 9. Perfect timing. The gym didn't open until 11, which would give us plenty of time to go over what needed to be done. 9:30 sounds perfect, I texted back. Before I could place the phone down again, it buzzed twice more. Sounds great. 9:30 it is. A small smile tugged at the corners of my lips. Dante's POV. Oh no, I groaned as soon as I hit send on that last text. Why did I type "sounds great" twice? Now I just sounded overly eager. Maybe Sammy would think I was just confirming the time again. Yeah, let's hope for that. I sighed and rubbed the back of my neck. Calm down on. It's just a roofing job, I muttered to myself. No need to overthink it. I took a deep breath. Then another. All right, I said quietly. Focus. We've got a roof to fix. Chapter 14. Dante's POV. As soon as I arrived at Fight Club, all the confidence I'd been trying to build on my walk there vanished completely. I hated that Sammy didn't look the way I expected. Maybe I was secretly hoping he'd be someone easy to ignore. But of course, he wasn't. When he reached the entrance to unlock the door for me, my heart almost skipped a beat. It was only the second time I'd seen him wearing something that wasn't gym gear, and somehow, he managed to look even better than before. He was dressed in gray sweatpants and a long-sleeved shirt that had Fight Club printed across the chest, one of those soft, fitted workout shirts that outlined every movement of muscle without even trying. Good morning, he greeted, smiling as he held the door open for me. Morning, I replied quickly, looking away almost immediately. I had to focus on the floor just to keep myself from obviously staring. Sammy flipped the lock on the doors and guided me toward the staircase leading up to his apartment. The climb took a bit of effort since the gym's ceilings were high, but when we reached the top, his familiar living room came into view, noticeably tidier than when I'd last seen it on Thursday. Thanks again for doing this, he said. I really hope I got the right materials. The cashier at Jack's tried her best to help, but I think she was new. I ended up finding most of it myself so she wouldn't get too overwhelmed. I couldn't help smiling. That was surprisingly considerate of him. Not a problem, I replied. From what I see here, I can make it work. When I glanced up from the supplies, our eyes met. He seemed like he was about to say something but didn't, just looked at me for a moment before clearing his throat. So, I took the day off to help out. Is there anything I can start with? Oh, why you really don't have to, I said quickly. Honestly, I was sure that Sammy's presence would make focusing a whole lot harder. Having company while working would have been nice, but Sammy? Definitely not safe territory. I wasn't exactly confident in my ability to think straight around him. I insist, he said firmly. There's no way I'm letting you climb up there without someone down here keeping an eye out. His words were logical, purely about safety, but for some reason, my heart still picked up its pace. I needed to pull myself together and stop reading too much into everything. All right, I nodded, trying to sound calm. You could start by grabbing one of those empty boxes over there. I'll be throwing down some of the old wood, you can just collect it. Sure, he said easily, moving a few things aside to make space while I climbed the ladder up to the beams. I figured we'd work in silence for a while, but Sammy broke it almost immediately. So, what brings you to New York? He asked. My hands gripped the wooden beams tighter than necessary as I hoisted myself up. If this was the kind of conversation we were having today, I wasn't sure how long I could keep it together. I took a moment before answering. I just needed a change of scenery, I said finally. From up here, I could see the worst of the roof damage. I pulled my hammer from my belt and started working on the loose nails. From Texas to New York, huh? Quite the move, Sammy said from below. I watched him pick up the rotted pieces I dropped and place them neatly in the cardboard box. If you don't mind me asking, how was Texas? I pressed the hammer against the beam, loosening the old wood, and debated whether to answer. Just say you'd rather not talk about it, Dante. Just say that. But instead I sighed and said, it was a small town. Everyone knew everyone. It's hard to live in a place where your personal life becomes the headline of every rumor. I just needed to get away, from the people, mostly. If my hands weren't full, I probably would have smacked myself for rambling. I understand, Sammy said gently. And I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry. I shook my head quickly. Oh no, it's fine. Really. I just haven't talked about it in a long time. My voice faded as I pried another piece of wood loose. The large chunk suddenly gave way and fell, but Sammy caught it before it could hit the edge of the ladder. Thanks, I said, exhaling in relief. Don't worry about it, he said with a small smile. That's what I'm here for. That smile almost made me lose my footing. Maybe if I just don't look down again, I might actually survive this project. So, what made you choose New York? He asked next, tossing the damaged wood into the box. It hit the bottom with a soft thud. I paused, thinking carefully. What had made me choose New York? My mind flashed back to the train ride to Austin, to the moment I flipped through a travel magazine and saw a headline that read, "Get lost in the Big Apple." At the time, those words hit me hard. That's what I'd wanted, to get lost, to start over somewhere no one knew me. I made a lot of mistakes back home, I admitted quietly. Settled for things I shouldn't have. I thought moving somewhere completely new would give me a clean slate. In a small town, everyone's so caught up in appearances, pretending, judging. I wanted to go somewhere where people were too busy living their own lives to care about mine. Sammy didn't interrupt, he just listened. Really listened. After a while, he finally spoke. I think you're half right, he said thoughtfully. Here, you might not deal with small-town gossip or people judging your past, but don't be fooled by how cold New York seems on the surface. This city has heart. It's a community. We look out for each other. I know your first impression wasn't great, getting into that fight and all, but I hope you'll give this place a chance. The city and its people might surprise you. Chapter 15. Dante's POV. It took every ounce of willpower not to stare at Sammy. His words weren't what I expected. Actually, he wasn't what I expected. That familiar sting hit the back of my eyes, the kind that comes right before tears form, but I pushed it down, forcing myself to stay composed. Sammy's POV. I wasn't sure why Dante's words had affected me so deeply. It wasn't that I felt offended by what he said about New York, it was more about the mystery surrounding why he left Texas. I'd noticed it before, but now it was clear. Dante chose his words carefully. Every sentence seemed weighed and measured, like someone used to hiding parts of himself. And I understood that language all too well. I did the same when it came to my own past. It wasn't my place to pry, but the more he spoke, the more intrigued I became. Dante wasn't the kind of person you could figure out easily. He was a puzzle that changed every time you thought you were close to solving it. To steer the conversation away from uncomfortable ground, I decided to change the topic, though it wasn't easy. Nearly everything I wanted to ask about tied back to his past, and it was clear that was a road he wasn't ready to revisit. So instead, I asked about his interests, what he liked to do in his spare time. His answers were modest but sincere. He said he enjoyed building things, whether it was furniture or small model planes. It made sense, there was something steady and patient about him. After a while, I gave him a break from my questions and let him take the lead. He asked how I got into fighting. I offered a small smile, meeting his gaze from where he worked above me on the beams. My past's a bit of a dark one, I said honestly. I tried to take a different path for a while. I even went to medical school after making a few mistakes in my early years, but eventually, I realized that wasn't who I was meant to be. I gestured toward the gym below us, this is who I am. Dante nodded thoughtfully, his attention shifting back to his work. He was almost done removing the last few pieces of old wood covering the roof's damaged section. The thin layer of sweat on his shirt showed how hard he was working, and I could already feel the heat from outside seeping in through the exposed ceiling. I couldn't imagine how warm it must have been up there. It's a rare thing, he said finally. Finding something that feels like you, something you're truly passionate about. I couldn't tell if that was meant for me or if he was talking to himself, but the words lingered in the air between us. Have you eaten yet? I asked after a pause. We should take a break. Grayson should be finishing the warm-ups downstairs by now, and Cassie's probably bringing lunch soon. Let's go cool off. Dante removed the last piece of damaged wood and looked down at me. That sounds great, he said with a nod. Even though he moved carefully, I could tell by the deep breath he released when his feet hit the floor that being up that high wasn't easy. I led him back down to the gym. Grayson was rolling up the warm-up mats while the others got ready for sparring. Dante's POV. Hello, Grayson greeted as we walked into the main area. He was already back in his gym gear but looked much less exhausted than the other guys gearing up in the ring. Hey, Sammy said. Did the veterans show up yet? Everyone except Travis and Dustin, Grayson replied. You'll need to send out a search party if you expect them here on a Saturday morning. Travis's phone's off, and Dustin sent me to voicemail, twice. I could see the irritation flash across Sammy's face. At least the new guys are here, Grayson added. I've been working with Adrian all morning, but he still can't get the right cross and lead punch combo down. Didn't you go over it with him last night? Sammy nodded. He didn't get it then either, but I could tell I'd pushed him a little too hard. Get in the ring with him, let me see. Grayson called Adrian over. The kid couldn't have been older than 20. He already looked nervous as he stepped onto the mat. All right, Grayson instructed, raising his pads. Right cross, lead punch combo. Right cross, straight left, right cross. Then left hook, right cross. Adrian started the combo, but his left wasn't strong enough. Grayson barely reacted when it hit. Adrian tried to finish with a right cross and left hook, but the hook lacked power. Push in with your left side, Adrian. Sammy called out. Those hits wouldn't knock down anyone. Come on. The sound of gloves striking the pads filled the gym. The rhythm, the smell of sweat, the echo of movement, it all pulled me somewhere I didn't want to go. Memories stirred, not bad ones, but ones clouded by pain. My father had trained me in a place that sounded just like this. I shook the thought away and focused again. Sammy's frustration was clear. He wanted the kid to succeed. He needs to invert the combo, I whispered to myself. Or at least I thought I did, because Sammy suddenly turned to me. He needs to what? He asked. Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't my place. He cut me off. No, go on. What do you mean? I swallowed, then explained, invert it. Have him lead with the left cross as a feint, then come in with a double straight right, followed by a light left hook, slightly off target, and finish with a clean right uppercut. Sammy frowned slightly, thinking it through, then turned to Grayson and Adrian. All right, let's try something different. Left cross feint, double on the straight right, lighter left hook, finish with a right uppercut. My eyes widened as Grayson and Adrian reset. Adrian's new form was stronger, cleaner. The double right caught Grayson by surprise, and the follow-up uppercut almost broke through his defense. Grayson stumbled back, laughing in disbelief. Yes, Sammy exclaimed. That's what I'm talking about. Grayson put Adrian in a playful headlock and ruffled his hair. Almost got me, kid. Sammy turned toward me, curiosity in his eyes. How did you know that? The timing and momentum were all there, I explained. His left side isn't weak, it's his left hand. He's been hiding it really well, but I think he's dealing with a boxer's fracture. The excitement on Sammy's face disappeared instantly. He stepped into the ring, concern replacing his earlier pride. You have a fracture? He asked Adrian directly. The boy's face went pale. Yeah. Some guys from the neighborhood started a fight. I tried to throw a few punches back. Sammy's expression softened. Grayson helped him carefully remove Adrian's glove and unwrap the bandage underneath. Even from where I stood, I knew the look of that injury. It was the same kind of fracture my father had once gotten, after a tough fight early in his career. And later, after he'd thrown that same punch in anger at someone he should have protected. Chapter 16. Sammy's POV. Wait, hold on, my Dante? He did what? I asked, half in disbelief. I don't even know how to describe it, Grayson said, shaking his head. 1 second, I thought Adrian was just slacking off again because his punches were weaker than usual. Watch it, Aiden warned from across the room as he slid onto a stool at the bar. Adrian, not Eugen, Cassie clarified quickly. Oh. Aiden nodded, satisfied, and gestured for Grayson to continue. Anyway, Grayson went on, Adrian's hits weren't bad, just off. I've been sparring with the kid long enough to know his usual strength. Then Dante, out of nowhere, quietly says something about needing to inverse it. Yeah, I added. He barely whispered it. But he was right. Cassie frowned, clearly lost. You're gonna have to explain that one in normal people language. I'm not even going to bother, Grayson said flatly. You wouldn't get it. I appreciate your honesty, Cassie shot back with a smirk. Grayson ignored her. Basically, Dante figured out a new combo, something that worked around Adrian's injured hand, in less than 10 seconds of watching him fight. None of us even knew Adrian had an injury. But Dante noticed it right away. Cassie blinked. You're kidding. Nope, I replied, taking a sip of sparkling water. The kid's got an eye for this stuff. Grayson grimaced at his drink, the same way he always did when I made him give up soda. I pretended not to notice. I'm sorry, Cassie, Grayson said, but you're gonna have to fire him. Because we want to hire him, I added immediately. Cassie's jaw dropped. What? He's been amazing here. Do you have any idea how long it took to find someone reliable? You can't just take him. We found him first, Howard's voice called from behind us as he stepped out of the back room, gathering his things. Heading out? I asked. He nodded. Tell the lady I said hello. Will do, I said with a grin. Cassie shook her head. I'll never understand your friendship with him, or how that man even has a wife. He likes fighting. I like fighting. We bond over fighting, I replied simply. I like fighting too, Grayson chimed in. Yeah, but you also like coming here to flirt with Chris when she's supposed to be working, I reminded him. Grayson looked away, suddenly very interested in the ceiling. Anyway, Cassie said, cutting back in, you can't just steal Dante from us. What if we offer more? Grayson suggested. To me? Cassie asked, raising an eyebrow. No, to Dante, I clarified. It's not a bribe, exactly. More like an incentive. Cassie crossed her arms. Before you two go offering him deals, maybe think about what he actually needs. He's been sleeping on the floor, and I haven't found anyone with a spare mattress, besides you, Sammy. I sighed. Right. Cassie continued, I know you love living alone, but you do have that extra bedroom. Now, hold on, I started. She's right, Grayson interrupted. It could be temporary, just until he gets on his feet. A few weeks tops. Guys, we barely know him, I argued. Oh hush, Cassie said. He's a good guy. Definitely hiding from something, but still a good guy. And didn't you put out a roommate ad before? This isn't that different. And you're letting him fix your roof, Grayson added. Plus, you're built like a tank, Cassie teased. And you literally live above a gym full of other tanks, Grayson added. I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. Maybe it's not about safety, it's about my space. I like living alone. A little too alone, if you ask me, Cassie muttered. I don't need relationships when I'm married to my career, I reminded her. She rolled her eyes. It's just a few weeks, Sammy. Don't overthink it. The idea of him sleeping on that floor makes me sick. That last line got me. I pictured Dante in that rundown apartment, trying to rest on the bare floor after working all day. The thought stung more than I cared to admit. All right, I said finally. I'll give him a call tonight, but I can't promise he'll say yes. Dante's POV. The day had been long, hot, humid, and exhausting. The hole in Sammy's roof had nearly cooked me alive, and the hours I spent afterward wandering through the city searching for a cheap mattress didn't help either. By evening, I was back in my tiny apartment, staring at the sleeping bag still spread out on the floor. My so-called bed. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, the water stopped working. Okay, Dante, I muttered, standing in the tub as the shower dripped weakly. Don't lose it. You're fine. Everything's fine. The familiar sting built behind my eyes, the one that always came before tears. I took a shaky breath, determined to hold it in. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and froze. Sammy. My heart jumped. Why was he calling? Did I forget something at the gym? It was already past 9. I barely had time to think before the call was about to go to voicemail. Wiping at my eyes quickly, I answered. Hello. Hey. Sorry, hope I didn't catch you at a bad time, Sammy's warm voice came through. Instantly, I felt myself tense. He'd probably hear it in my voice, that I'd been crying. I hated that. No, not at all, I said quickly, forcing a bit of energy into my tone. Just a long day. What's wrong? He asked gently. His voice was steady, cutting right through my attempt to sound okay. I covered the mic and took a deep breath. Oh, moved to a new city, trying to figure things out. Just feeling the consequences of all that bravery, I joked weakly. He let out a soft laugh that made something in my chest ease. Anything too terrible? He asked. Let's just say I'm learning whether my building has 24-hour maintenance, I replied, chuckling. Days like this make me wish I knew plumbing. It's way too hot here to go without a shower. I caught myself rambling and stopped. Why was I telling him all this? There was a short pause. Then his voice came, calm but firm. Come over. My heart skipped a beat. He didn't say it as a question. He said it like an invitation that somehow felt safe. And for the first time that day, I actually considered saying yes. Chapter 17. Dante's POV. I wasn't exactly sure how I ended up here. And by here, I meant standing outside in the humid evening air, staring at the large, unlit sign that read Fight Club. I hadn't planned to come here until tomorrow. But one unexpected call from Sammy completely changed that. I tried to convince him it wasn't necessary, practically begged, even. I told him I could figure out the plumbing situation in the morning, but Sammy wouldn't take no for an answer. He insisted that no one had seen a maintenance worker in my building since the Reagan era. The final push came when he said if I didn't come over, he'd try to fix the plumbing himself. That was when I realized I had no way out of this. So, I threw on the same sweaty clothes I'd worn earlier, packed a small bag of clean clothes, and headed to the gym. After I texted Sammy to say I'd arrived, the lights inside flickered on. Through the glass, I saw him weaving between the gym equipment toward the door. He wore a plain short-sleeved shirt and joggers. Casual, effortless, and comfortable. Hey again, he greeted, offering a small smile as he held the door open. Hey, I replied with a nod, stepping inside. The pause that followed was brief, but it felt like time itself slowed down. Sammy cleared his throat softly. You must be exhausted. Come on, I'll show you to the showers. He led me through the dimly lit gym toward the locker room. They're right through here. I left some essentials on the counter for you. Just let me know when you're done. I smiled faintly. Thank you. You really didn't have to do all this. He chuckled lightly. I know I didn't, but I wanted to. Plus, NYC humidity is brutal, you'll feel better after a shower. He wasn't wrong. The short walk over had already glued my clothes to my skin. Once he left, I found the counter neatly arranged with everything I could possibly need: bar soap, body wash, shampoo, conditioner, a loofah, and at least 5 different towels. I couldn't help but laugh softly. What in the world? I muttered. There was no way I needed half of it. But the faint, calming scent of the shampoo made me smile. When in Rome, right? I showered as quickly as I could, not wanting to keep Sammy waiting. The warm water washed away the exhaustion of the day. By the time I got dressed, I felt refreshed, but also eager to tell him I was heading home. When I made it upstairs, Sammy was relaxing on his couch with the TV on and a drink in hand. His hair, normally tied up, now flowed freely past his shoulders. For a moment I just stood there, frozen, watching him run his fingers through it. Get it together, thought. Oh, that was quick, Sammy said when he noticed me. Didn't want to keep you waiting, I replied, managing a small, nervous smile. He looked surprised. Wait, you're heading out already? Yeah, I really should. You've already done so much for me. He shook his head. It's late and the weather's awful. Don't worry about heading home tonight. I've got a spare bedroom. You can stay here and go back in the morning. I opened my mouth to argue but quickly realized there was no winning this one. Sammy had that way of making every suggestion sound perfectly reasonable. All right, I finally said. Great. He smiled warmly. Can I get you something to drink? I shook my head. I'm good, thanks. He motioned toward the couch. At least sit down for a bit. Trying to walk over gracefully turned out to be harder than expected. My foot hit the corner of the coffee table, and I winced in pain. Sammy immediately straightened. You okay? Yeah, just testing the strength of your furniture. I joked weakly, limping toward the sofa. When I sat down, he gave me that look, the kind that made me feel like he could see right through me. His eyes were calm but intense, and suddenly I wished I hadn't worn my old Scooby-Doo shirt. I'd assumed I'd be heading home, not sitting across from him like this. For a while, he flipped through some notebooks, taking quiet sips from his glass. Every so often, he'd glance at me, just briefly, and it made my pulse quicken each time. Finally, I found my courage. I just wanted to. We both started speaking at once, then stopped, laughing nervously. "You first," he said. "Okay," I nodded. "I just wanted to say thank you. I know you didn't have to do any of this, but it means a lot." Sammy's smile softened. "You're welcome here anytime, Dante." My face grew warm, and I quickly looked away. "What were you going to say?" I asked quietly. He set his notebook aside. "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about. I know you're new to the city, and it can be tough settling in. Cassie mentioned you still need to get a few essentials, including a bed." I immediately felt my chest tighten. Of course, Cassie told him that. "I have an extra room here," Sammy continued. "The spare bed's too heavy to move without help, but if you need a place to stay while you get things sorted, you're welcome to use it." My first instinct was to refuse. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because pity wasn't something I wanted from anyone, least of all him. "I really do appreciate it," I said gently. "But I'll figure it out. I'd rather handle it myself." Sammy's expression softened. He nodded slowly. "I understand. Just know that I offered because I wanted to, not because I had to." Sammy's POV. It wasn't long before Dante finally gave in to exhaustion. He barely made it through our conversation before his eyes began to close. I led him to the small guest room down the hall, handed him an extra blanket, and told him to rest. He mumbled another quiet thank you before drifting off almost immediately. I smiled to myself as I lingered by the door for a moment, just to make sure he was comfortable. The night stretched ahead, a long one filled with paperwork, planning, and organizing new training sessions for the gym. But somehow, knowing Dante was resting safely just a few rooms away made the silence of the place feel a little less lonely. Chapter 18. Sammy's POV. When I woke up the next morning, I was surprised to see that I'd beaten my alarm clock. Considering I didn't crawl into bed until almost 2 in the morning, I half expected to sleep through half the day. But somehow I felt wide awake. There was a strange burst of energy running through me, unusual for this early hour. The clock read a little past 6, and with no classes scheduled today, I figured I might as well use it. I quickly made my bed, threw on a pair of workout shorts, grabbed my gym bag, and headed downstairs. Living right above the gym had its perks. It made mornings like this easy. Converting the upstairs studio into an apartment had been one of my best decisions. The moment I reached the gym floor, I was greeted by the familiar scent of leather and faint traces of sweat, oddly comforting. It was home. I placed my old iPod into the dock, set the playlist to shuffle, and started wrapping my hands. The first beat kicked in, and I began my morning routine. Dante's POV. The first thing that reached my senses was music. Faint at first, then steadily growing louder. My eyes blinked open, and for a brief second, I didn't know where I was. Then the memories of last night came back slowly, piece by piece. Sammy's spare bedroom. And I was on Sammy's incredibly soft guest bed. As I stretched, my body groaned in protest, like it was waking up for the first time in years. I reached my arms over my head and let out a deep breath before deciding to follow the sound of the music. The staircase felt longer than I remembered, so I took my time going down. When I finally reached the gym, I saw that most of the lights were still dim, except one. Under that light was Sammy. He was in his boxing gear, focused and steady, throwing precise combinations at the heavy bag. For a moment, I just watched. His form was incredible, balanced, fluid, powerful. Each strike looked effortless yet strong enough to send the bag swinging hard with every hit. Then I noticed him pause, step back, and reset his stance. He threw another punch, even stronger this time, but slightly off target. And that's when he noticed me. He flinched slightly in surprise, pulling off his gloves for a second. Oh hey, Fiani. You scared me. I didn't hear you come in. I'm sorry, I replied quickly. Didn't mean to sneak up on you. Sammy smiled, still catching his breath. It's alright. Just needed to burn off some early morning energy. He paused. Wait, did the music wake you? I didn't realize it was that loud. I shook my head. No, it's fine. I was already awake. I just followed the sound, then saw you, and wow, you're really good. He laughed lightly between short breaths. Well, I should hope so. I teach this after all. His grin widened. But just good? That's all I get. That teasing smile made it hard to look him in the eyes. I chuckled nervously. Okay, more than good. You've got serious power. And I meant it. Watching him, I could tell how much discipline and strength went into every move. Though, I added, hesitating for a second, if you shift your left foot back a little, toe angled slightly outward, it'll open up space on your right side. That'll give your next punch more control and impact. Think of it like a train track. It channels your power in one clean direction. Sammy listened intently, nodding. Without another word, he adjusted his stance and threw another punch. The impact echoed across the gym, clean, strong, perfect. He turned toward me, a wide smile breaking across his face. I realized I was grinning too. I'd missed this feeling. Analyzing. Teaching. Helping someone improve. Sammy slipped off his gloves, unwrapped his hands, and stepped closer. Even that simple motion, calm and focused, drew my attention. Thanks for that, he said, catching his breath. You're amazing, you know that? For a moment, I forgot how to respond. Thank you, I finally managed, awkwardly scratching my neck. His expression softened. I know we talked last night about how you felt uneasy about staying here. And I get it, I really do. But I wanted to offer something different this time. Something that works for both of us. I met his eyes, curious. We've been looking for someone to help supervise the beginner classes, he explained. You clearly know what you're doing. If you're willing, you could help out here. It's flexible, you can come whenever you're free, so it won't interfere with your job at Tidal Wave. I stayed quiet, processing his words. He wasn't offering charity. He was offering opportunity and trust. Sammy continued, this isn't about staying here for free. You'd earn it. Plus, the roof project is still separate. That payment stays yours. This would just give you a place to stay, a chance to teach, and maybe even reconnect with something you're great at. He looked at me, calm, patient, but with a kind of sincerity that made it hard to look away. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, but another part held back. I'd promised myself I'd keep my distance from fighting, from everything it represented. It wasn't what I came here for. But then again, maybe things had changed. Sammy, Cassie, Grayson, all of them had shown me kindness I hadn't expected. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Finally, I looked up and said, I'll help, but only under one condition. Name it, Sammy said without hesitation. No fighting. I won't step into the ring or spar with anyone. I'll coach, observe, and give direction, but that's it. Sammy nodded. You won't have to. You have my word. I smiled, small but genuine. All right then. Somehow, overnight, I'd gone from one job to 3. But for the first time in a while, I didn't mind. Chapter 19. Sammy's POV. I didn't completely understand Dante's reasoning for not wanting to fight, but I decided it wasn't my place to ask. What mattered most was that he had agreed to help us, and that was enough for me. Dante said he'd head home for a while and return later with some of his things. That gave me more free time than expected, so I decided to call Grayson over. That sure is a hole in your ceiling, Grayson muttered, eyeing the damage while sipping a mango-flavored LaCroix with visible hesitation. That it is, I replied, looking up at the same hole. It's starting to get pretty warm in here. How high do you have that air conditioner set? He asked. The highest, I admitted. And he was right. It was hot. After my morning shower, I had changed into another pair of shorts and a shirt, but the heat was starting to get unbearable. I really picked the worst time to fix this. You really did, Grayson agreed with a small laugh. I think we'll be getting some stormy weather around tournament time. Hopefully, that hole's fixed by then." We both looked back up at the ceiling. Dante said the repairs wouldn't take more than a few days, though that was before I offered him another job here. Now he'd be dividing his time 3 ways, and honestly, I cared far more about the gym's training schedule than about a hole in the roof. "I'm surprised everything worked out so well," Grayson said after a moment. "He agreed to stay here and work with us? That's a pretty unexpected turn of events. I bet that guy's a real powerhouse in the ring." "He won't be fighting," I replied. Grayson raised a brow. "All right, but he'll still spar a little, right?" "He won't be sparring either. He's not doing any fighting." Grayson turned to me, clearly confused. "What do you mean he's not doing any fighting?" "I mean exactly that," I said with a small shrug. "Then what's he going to do?" "Instruct," I replied simply. Grayson blinked. "Without fighting?" "Yes, Grayson. He was able to catch that boxing fracture on Adrian without even touching him. I think he'll be fine." Grayson looked skeptical but eventually nodded. "I wonder what his story is. The way he reworked Adrian's combos so quickly, that's not something a beginner would notice. He must have been around professional boxing for a while." I silently agreed. Dante clearly understood the sport, probably even mastered it. But there was something in the way he looked at fighting, a strange mix of admiration and fear. I wasn't used to seeing those two emotions exist so closely together. Dante's POV. I had done everything I could to delay leaving my apartment today. I even went on yet another pointless hunt for a mattress. The 10th one, maybe the 100th. Nothing seemed right. By the time evening came, I almost hoped Sammy had forgotten about our arrangement. Then my old flip phone buzzed. "Are you wrapping things up there soon?" I was just about to start dinner. I stared at the message for a moment. Clearly, he hadn't forgotten. My eyes drifted toward the suitcase already packed with my essentials. Maybe I didn't really want him to forget. When I arrived at the gym, Sammy greeted me at the door, holding a spatula. "Hey, let me help you with that," he said, gesturing toward my suitcase. I shook my head quickly. "Oh, no worries. I've got it. Looks like your hands are full anyway." I nodded toward the spatula, smiling. Sammy glanced down and chuckled. "Yeah, about that. I should probably confess, I have absolutely no idea how to cook." I gave him a puzzled look as he led the way upstairs. "Then why are you cooking?" I asked carefully. He kept his eyes forward, but I could have sworn his face turned slightly red. "I thought I'd try to make dinner for you, I mean for us." He scratched his neck awkwardly, though I'm not sure what I made is even edible. He led me to the small kitchen area, revealing a pot of what looked like meat sauce. I dipped a spoon into it and took a small taste, then quickly spat it into the sink. Sammy covered his face with his palm. "Is it that bad?" he asked hesitantly. I offered a weak smile. "How much salt did you use?" He checked the open cookbook. It said 3 tablespoons? I blinked. That doesn't sound right. He reread the page and his eyes widened. "Wait, is a tablespoon the small one or the big one?" I shook my head. "That would be a teaspoon. The smaller one." "Oh." He sighed in defeat. "Well, that explains a lot. Should we just order pizza?" I looked down at the sauce again, then opened his spice cabinet. "I think I can fix it. Do you have a bigger pot? I'll need more tomato sauce and some water." Yeah, over there," he said, handing them over. "So, I got to work. Is there anything you can't do?" Sammy mumbled later, halfway through the meal. I smiled, trying not to stare, though it was hard not to notice how even in simple moments like this, he somehow made the room feel lighter. "I can't ice skate," I said seriously. Sammy grinned. "Well, New York might be one of the best places to learn, in winter at least." When he finished eating, I stood to clear the plates, but he beat me to it. "Where'd you learn to cook?" he asked, taking my plate to the sink. "From my mother," I said automatically. The words slipped out before I could stop them. "She must be an amazing cook," Sammy said with a warm smile. "Is she back in Texas?" The question caught me off guard. Technically, my parents were in Texas, buried side by side at St. Anthony's Cemetery. I wasn't sure why, but I decided to be honest. Both my parents passed away a few years ago, I said quietly. Sammy froze, still holding the dish in his hand. Oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. It's all right, I said quickly. There's no way you could have known. It was right after I turned 21. He nodded softly. How old are you now? I'll be 25 next February. He placed the dishes into the dishwasher and hesitated before speaking again. Can I ask you something else? It's just out of curiosity, and I don't mean to offend you. I nodded for him to continue. How do you know so much about boxing? I had expected this question eventually. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything yesterday when I noticed Adrian's boxing injury, but I couldn't stand by and watch him hurt himself further. Now I was stuck between lying or telling the truth. Then I looked at Sammy, patiently waiting, no judgment in his expression. There were a lot of things I wasn't ready to share, but this wasn't one of them. I learned from my father, I said finally. He was a professional boxer. Chapter 20. Sammy's POV. I glanced at the clock beside my bed. Almost midnight. I had planned to sleep by 10 so I'd be well rested for tomorrow's early training classes. But my mind refused to quiet down. All I could think about was my conversation with Dante. Every time we talked, I felt like I understood him more and less, all at once. He was a mystery that drew me in the more I tried to step back. When he mentioned that both of his parents had passed away, I felt something stir inside me, a quiet connection I couldn't fully explain. I hadn't told him that I'd lost my parents too. I just listened, carefully holding on to every word he was willing to share. His father being a boxer explained his natural skill. But it didn't explain why Dante seemed to both love and fear the sport at the same time. Something must have happened, something that changed the way he looked at fighting. I sighed, realizing how deep my thoughts had gone. Here I was, lying in bed, trying to piece together Dante's past like some sort of late-night detective. Why was I so curious about him? Monday passed faster than I expected. One moment, I was shouting instructions at my novice fighters to start warm-ups. The next, I was telling them to hurry up and pack their things before closing time. Cassie had stopped by earlier to drop off lunch, and as usual, she couldn't stop talking about how thrilled she was that I'd let Dante stay with me for a while. I told her she was exaggerating, though deep down I was happy too. Dante seemed comfortable, and that mattered. She also updated me on his new schedule, long shifts, but only 3 days a week. That left him free on Tuesdays and Thursdays, perfect for assisting with the novice group while I handled the veterans. By the time I finally finished sorting the accounting books, I was exhausted. Grayson stayed to help me close up before rushing off to Tidal Wave, the bar where Chris worked. He wanted to catch her before her shift ended. I wanted to head straight home, but then I remembered Dante was walking back from the same place tonight. Maybe he'd appreciate some company. Tidal Wave's lights were still on when I arrived, but most of the crowd had already gone. From the doorway, I saw Dante behind the counter, helping Cassie clean glasses while Aiden and Chris poured themselves a drink. Dante had a faint, genuine smile on his face, one that made something in my chest feel lighter. I hadn't realized how rare that smile was until now. Grayson pushed through the door beside me. Hello. Happy Monday, everyone, he announced dramatically as he slid onto a bar stool. Someone's in a good mood, Cassie teased, placing clean shot glasses in front of us. Of course I am. It's Monday, which means I get to relax without this guy, he pointed at me, making me run extra laps for it. I rolled my eyes. I'm just looking out for your health. Sure, he said, smirking. Or maybe you just enjoy torturing me. Who else forces a grown man to drink sparkling water? Chris laughed softly. I actually like LaCroix. Grayson immediately straightened. You know what? You're absolutely right. Maybe I haven't given it a fair chance. Dante tried to stifle a laugh, while Cassie and Aiden exchanged knowing smiles. We were all used to Grayson suddenly agreeing with anything Chris said. It was obvious he liked her, though I had a feeling she was waiting for him to make the first move. As the night went on, we talked about training and the upcoming tournament. One by one, the group raised their glasses for a quick toast. I noticed Dante hesitated before drinking. He wasn't much of a drinker, and it showed, but he still joined in with a polite smile. After a few more rounds, I decided to call it a night. Dante followed soon after, while Grayson and the others stayed behind to continue celebrating. "Just make sure you show up to work tomorrow," I told Grayson as we left. He gave me a lazy salute. "Yes, boss." Dante and I stepped into the quiet street together, the night air cool against our skin. "Hopefully today wasn't too tiring for you," I said as the gym came into view. "Not really," Dante replied. "I'm just excited to get back into training tomorrow. I've missed it." His voice softened at the end, almost as if he hadn't meant to say it aloud. I smiled faintly. Maybe the drinks had loosened his guard, or maybe, for once, he just felt safe enough to admit it. When we reached the gym's upstairs studio, Dante went into his small room to change. He came back a few minutes later wearing shorts and a short-sleeved button-up. The top few buttons were undone, and I could see beads of sweat glistening on his forehead from the lingering heat in the room. He looked over curiously as I flipped through some notebooks scattered on the coffee table. "Come here for a second," I said, motioning for him to sit beside me. "These are the combo sets I've been working on for the tournament. They're new, but I think we can adjust them for each fighter's strengths. Can you look through these and tell me what you'd change?" He nodded and began turning the pages thoughtfully. His focus was sharp, the kind of attention that came from years of experience. As he leaned closer to the table, a drop of sweat trailed from his temple down his neck. For a moment, I caught myself staring, distracted by something I couldn't quite name. I quickly looked away, pretending to focus on the notes. "Did you ever fight competitively?" I asked. He looked up from the notebook, meeting my gaze for a brief moment before nodding. "For a while, yes." I wasn't surprised by the answer, just by how openly he said it. "What made you stop?" I asked quietly. Dante hesitated. The silence that followed felt heavy, almost delicate. "There was a lot that happened in Texas," he said finally. "A lot I'm still trying to make sense of." He brushed the sweat from his brow, his tone calm but distant, like he was speaking through memories he didn't want to revisit. "It was a series of bad choices," he continued softly. "I think most people can trace their pain back to a difficult relationship. Mine was no different. Who was the reason I stopped fighting and left Texas?" His words echoed in my mind long after he said them. That single word lingered, quietly but powerfully, as I looked at Dante. And for the first time, I realized there was still so much more to his story than he was ready to tell. Chapter 21. Dante's POV. I woke up the next morning feeling completely refreshed. A good night's rest had finally made me remember what sleeping on a real bed felt like. Then, a familiar and mouth-watering smell reached my nose. Was that bacon? My eyes flew open instantly. A light haze of smoke floated through the air, carrying the scent of something being cooked. I quickly searched for some shorts under the blanket once I realized I had fallen asleep in nothing but boxers, probably from the heat last night. Once I pulled on my clothes, I headed out to see what was going on. Sammy was in the kitchen, dressed in his usual gym shorts and t-shirt, making what looked like breakfast. Considering how dinner had gone last time, I felt slightly alarmed. Everything okay?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He glanced over with a grin. "Good morning. Yeah, I thought I'd make breakfast for your first official day at the gym." I smiled back, still a bit hesitant. "Oh, that's nice of you. I just remember you mentioning cooking isn't exactly your thing." Sammy laughed. "Dinner? No. Breakfast? That's my specialty. So, if you're okay with breakfast food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I'm your guy." He placed 2 plates on the counter and added cheerfully, "Now, the most important question, how do you like your eggs?" By the time we got to the gym later, I had learned one thing. I now liked my eggs the same way I liked most of Sammy's novice fighters. A little beaten and definitely scrambled. I had never met a group so unfocused before. The day began smoothly with warm-ups and basic drills. But when it came to combinations, everything started falling apart. "Brian, don't lock your leg," I said, trying to correct one of the novices. "You need to stay light on your feet." He gave a defeated sigh and tried again, still too stiff. "How's it going?" Sammy's voice suddenly came from behind me, making me jump slightly. I hadn't even noticed him walk up. Where did you find this group? I whispered. He smirked. Well, this year we had to take in some new fighters who could afford lessons. Half of them came from street basketball games, and the rest from prep schools. Not much experience, but they can pay for a year up front. Once my old novices leveled up, we needed new recruits for the beginner bracket. I looked back at the group. Let me guess, Brian's from the street courts, and that Kyle kid over there? Definitely a prep school guy. Sammy nodded. Pretty much. They've got a little fight in them, but not much direction. You just have to meet them where they are. I took a deep breath. Got it. Brian? I called out. You play basketball, right? He nodded. Think about your stance before taking a three-pointer, not too low, but strong. Use that same energy when you throw your right cross. Push through like you're shooting. Brian followed my instructions. His next punch wasn't perfect, but it was miles better than before. Well done, Sammy said with an approving smile. Thanks, I replied, a little sheepishly. He gave a quick nod and went to work with his veteran fighters. By the end of the day, Brian had improved, but Kyle, one of the prep kids, was another story. No matter how I explained a simple 4-hit combo, he couldn't get it right. When I tried correcting his stance, he crossed his arms and muttered, "Why don't you just get in here and show me? Or are you too scared to spar?" I ignored the attitude, focusing instead on calmly repeating the instruction. Luckily, Sammy called it a night before things could escalate. Once the gym cleared out, I went straight to the locker room to shower. Sammy and Grayson were still sparring outside. I hadn't thrown a single punch all day, but somehow, I was exhausted. By the time I finished and came out, they were wrapping things up. I'm heading to Tidal Wave to check on Cass, Grayson said as he packed his bag. Sammy smirked. Sure. We all know who you're really checking on. He wasn't wrong. Anyone could see how Grayson felt about Chris. The funny part was that Chris clearly liked him back. The only thing standing in their way was Grayson's total lack of confidence. I still couldn't figure that out, honestly. The guy looked like he walked straight out of a fitness magazine. Good night, Thunit. Great work today. Grayson called out as he left. Sammy's POV. Thanks. Take care. I heard Dante call after him before the door closed. Then Dante started helping me roll up the extra mats. Oh, you really don't have to, I said, but he shook his head. I work here now too, remember? He teased. I chuckled and nodded, sneaking occasional glances his way. There was something different about him today, lighter, more at ease. Maybe it was being back in the gym. For me, boxing had always been my safe space, the one thing that could pull me out of any bad mood. Maybe it was the same for him. I watched as he lifted the heavy punching bags, muscles flexing with each movement. His shirt shifted slightly as he worked, revealing just a hint of his toned stomach before falling back into place. I caught myself staring longer than I should have, then quickly looked away, clearing my throat. Still, the image lingered in my mind, and I couldn't quite shake it no matter how hard I tried. Chapter 22. Dante's POV. Wednesday moved slower than molasses. Business at Tidal Wave was so quiet that Cass and I spent almost the entire shift making a list of random trivia questions just to pass the time. I barely saw Howard all day. He had come in during the morning, but by noon, when I went to give him the updated inventory list, he was gone. Did he step out or something? I asked. Cass shook her head. He went home. If we don't get a single customer by 10 in the morning, he calls it a slow day and takes off. I blinked. That doesn't really make much sense, she finished for me with a grin. Yeah, we know. But he gives us paid holidays and sick leave, so no one complains. Plus, it's not like he was going to do much work here anyway. I couldn't argue with that logic. The rest of the day passed in quiet monotony. It didn't hit me until later that between Tidal Wave and Fight Club, I barely saw Sammy anymore, even though I was living with him. He stopped by the bar that evening, so we walked home together, but our conversation mostly stayed on boxing. By the time we got back, we were both exhausted. We went over a new combo set for Brian, and then called it a night. When Thursday arrived, I realized I might have made a huge mistake juggling 3 jobs. Tired, didn't even begin to describe how I felt when I sat up in bed that morning. But beyond the exhaustion, something else felt off. I couldn't explain it. It was a strange, heavy feeling that I couldn't quite shake. Music drifted faintly through the air, which meant Sammy was already up, probably doing his morning workout. I reached for my phone to check the time, and nearly fell off the bed. It was 9:30. "Oh no, no, no," I muttered under my breath, rushing to throw on workout shorts and a sweatshirt before bolting down the stairs. Sure enough, Grayson and Sammy were already busy, Grayson with the novices, and Sammy running drills with the veterans. "I'm so sorry," I blurted out. Grayson smiled, waving it off. "Don't worry about it. We're just finishing warm-ups. Sammy mentioned you might start a bit late. You can jump in now, he's running an ab workout today. The guys earned it after yesterday." He handed me the chart of exercises, and I grimaced immediately. These routines were brutal. If the novices didn't hate me already, they definitely would now. "Okay, everyone," I began, facing a group of half-awake, barely motivated fighters. Most were only a few years younger than me, but their lack of focus made them seem like restless kids. "Kyle, that's a right uppercut, not a left hook," I called out. "It's 3 minus 3 minus 4 minus 6b, left hook, right uppercut to the body." He still wasn't listening, hitting the bag however he wanted. When he finally got the combo right, his punches had lost all power from the sloppy repetitions earlier. Trying to stay calm, I grabbed a pair of pads. "Come on, Kyle," I said, motioning him over. "Let's try this together." He frowned. "I thought you said you weren't fighting." "I'm not," I replied evenly. "I just want to feel how strong your hits are." He nodded, though I could tell he was frustrated. I braced myself as he went through the combo again. Light taps, barely any force. Again, I instructed. His second attempt was better, but still lacked focus. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Sammy sparring in the ring with one of the veterans, Vinny. Vinny was huge, taller than Sammy, and clearly built for power. Sammy moved fast, but Vinny landed a heavy uppercut that sent him stumbling backward against the ropes. I winced. For a split second, my attention slipped. That was all it took. Kyle's punch missed the pad and hit me square on the cheekbone. The hit was strong enough to make me stumble back a few steps. I lifted a hand to my face, feeling a sharp sting. Before I could even react, Sammy was already there. He crossed the floor in seconds, pushing Kyle back against the wall, his arm braced across the kid's shoulder. "What happened?" Sammy demanded, his voice tight with anger. Kyle's earlier confidence vanished. I didn't mean to." "Sammy, it's fine." I tried to interject, but he didn't seem to hear me. "Everyone, that's it for today," Sammy called out, his voice echoing through the gym. "Be back here tomorrow, ready to work hard. And if you can't bring focus or respect into this place, don't bother showing up." The room fell silent. Even the veterans paused what they were doing. Sammy turned back to Kyle. "You're on thin ice. Around here, money or privilege doesn't buy you a spot on this team. Earn it." Kyle nodded quickly, clearly shaken. Within minutes, the novices were gone, and the veterans started packing up. Grayson gave Sammy a firm handshake before heading out too. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said quietly. When the gym finally cleared, Sammy disappeared into the back room and came back with a first aid kit. "It's really not that bad," I said, trying to downplay it. But he gestured for me to sit by the ring anyway. "My fighters don't act like that," he said softly but firmly. "They don't take cheap shots. That's not how we train here." The seriousness in his voice caught me off guard. It wasn't just about the punch, it was about the principle. I watched him as he carefully opened the kit, his brow furrowed with focus. Something about his quiet protectiveness stirred emotions in me I didn't quite understand. After years of normalizing anger, harsh words, and worse, being treated with care felt foreign. And yet, here he was. Sammy leaned in close, inspecting the bruise on my cheek. His concentration was unwavering, his hands gentle. For a moment, I forgot about the sting of the punch entirely. "You really need to protect this face better," he murmured almost absent-mindedly. "It's too good-looking to be taking hits like that." I froze. He did too. It seemed to take him a moment to realize what he'd said. His hands stopped mid-motion, the air between us suddenly charged with unspoken words. He started, his gaze lifting to meet mine. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. I could feel the warmth of his breath, the steady rhythm of his chest. And as his eyes flickered briefly toward my lips, my pulse quickened. He was close. So close, I wasn't sure who leaned in first. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.